Dorothy Wakenshaw's husband Adam was undoubtedly a hero, being killed whilst winning a Victoria Cross fighting in North Africa. Both Dorothy and her young son Thomas travelled to Buckingham Palace to receive the medal from the King. But by the end of the war, the loss of a father and husband had taken a terrible toll on the family. 2 generations on, Adam Wakenshaw's grandson Mark wants to find out more about the events of that fateful day.
Going all the way through this and becoming a father myself, sort of saying, I need to finish this off somehow. I've never finished it off. I've sort of never found out what my grandfather was really like. And I think I needed that to sort of pass on that pride that I've got, to draw a line under it for me. Well, I'm married and I have 2 boys, Adam, who's 4, and Ethan, who's 2. I was brought up by my mum from when I was 18 months old in a 3-bedroom flat with my 2 brothers and my sister. Didn't know my father at all until quite recently.
Mark's own father left the family when he was a young child, so he's had to rely on second-hand information in his hunt to find out more about his grandfather, Adam.
One of the incidents that sort of brought it to the fore for me was actually getting a copy in 1977 of the Victor comic, which in them days had true stories about the heroes who got medals during the war. And one of my friends at school brought that in, and that's when it really sort of clicked. I thought a genuine brave man, you know what I mean, to see it. People said he always a brave man, but not having sort of anything substantial to hold on to. This one I've managed to get a copy of a 1962 copy. I mean, that's a proof in print how brave he was, you know. And he always, I used to read the Victor comic myself. Boys who own stories of daring do and stuff like that. And I wonder if I could do something like that. And all of a sudden, you've got a picture, or a whole front page and back page about your grandfather. Today I'm going to have a trip up to see a man called Colonel Harry Sell. I think he's about 95, 96 year old, who was actually on the opposite ridge during the engagement where my grandfather won his Victoria Cross. So I'm actually going to see him and hopefully get a first-hand account.
Looking at your grandfather, and I knew him well, I knew him beforehand, and I started the war in France and go to Dunkirk with him. His earlier life was one of great hardship. He was a chap who society had done him no favours at all. Mark, this are a few maps that I have prepared so that will give you an idea of the desert battles in which your grandfather was involved.
Adam and Harry faced terrible conditions whilst fighting in North Africa.
The elements were greater than the enemy at times. The problem was water, fatigue, food. We'd been on half rations, conditions of the heat and so on. So that exhaustion was one of the greatest problems, and that was what I found was my greatest problem at times, was exhaustion.
Harry was commanding troops on a ridge that overlooked Adam's gun emplacement and witnessed everything that was about to happen.
The guns were here, I was there. Wakenshaw's position was about here. I opened fire at the approaching guns, which were oiling into this area. I was the last one to be killed. Somewhere within him, as within some other people, there is a spirit which only comes to the surface and you don't know why. And that, certainly in Wakenshaw's case, for no apparent reason, he just simply rose above all the circumstances which happened at the time.
They found my grandfather dead on the back of the small gun he was operating, and actually buried him by his gun with a small wooden cross literally within 2 feet of where he was found and where he died. Meeting Harry Sell was an honour, to meet somebody who was there and fought. And it was a really harsh campaign. There was hard work, because you're losing lads on a daily basis. You're losing men. So it must have been horrendous conditions. It just must have been just hell, I would have thought. I couldn't really imagine it. Even though I'd been in the army, some of the things were bad, but I never fought under those conditions, and I would never want to.
Although Adam Wakenshaw didn't come home, Harry, the man who saw him die, did make it. But it was a difficult return to England after spending the last year and a half as a prisoner of war.
After being away for 6 years, I couldn't recognise the conditions at home, and they didn't equate with what I'd imagined them to be whilst I was hoping to get home. We got on a train up to Newcastle, and I got off there, and I came over the bridge, and I walked about and looked about, and thousands of people seemed to be about. An astonished voice said, are you Harold Sell? And I looked round, and there was my mother and my father. And they had been telephoned, turning the train, and they'd been waiting. And they hadn't recognised me, and I hadn't recognised them. And then we went to a little place, a little cafe which was open there for soldiers and people. And we sat down, and we never really spoke. We were just trying to weigh each other up. And tea was poured out, and after drinking this and everything was over, I ate my biscuit thing and had the tea. When Mother and Father had finished, I poured out the rest of the tea into my pot and drank it. And as I hadn't really had anything to eat probably for about 3 days, I was very hungry. So I ate the crumbs on the plates, and then I opened the teapot and I ate the tea leaves, and my mother collapsed. It was the contrast between how I had changed in my expectations and what they were.
With the end of war, as Adam's family faced their own difficulties, Harry Sell and his parents were coping with his own return home. And for Harry, VE Day was not necessarily one of great joy.
To me, VE Day was not a day of celebration. It was one of reflection. I remember on VE Day, my father, who I think was as concerned about me as I was, we went out to the hillside there, where as a boy I'd run around. I didn't talk much to Father. Father didn't talk much to me. But I remember the whole day I stood and watched a few rabbits running around. I saw the sheep and heard the birds and looked at the sky. And I walked around and I walked on the grass. I remember thinking to myself, all those men, all this destruction, everything else, just so that I can walk on here and look at what we have around us. This today is a most wonderful return to what then was reality and the waking from horror. I'm very grateful because I have come back. And I always think, and it has never left me, that when I come back and I think of those people who were killed and maimed, and I think of their families and everything, I feel a great responsibility upon me for having led them to their deaths. That will never go.
After everything I found out about my grandfather and meeting Harry Sell, I think the next thing I would like to do is visit El Alamein Cemetery and visit Mer Cemetery or the battlefield itself. And really I'd like to go with a person like Harry Sell, and that would be, for me, a rounding off of the story and sort of maybe putting a full stop in it, because I've been there and I understand it. And later on in life, and take my kids out later on, hopefully they'll get interested and take them out there. I was thinking about this the other day, actually, what I would take to leave there if I went. And I've got a good thing in my mind that I'll actually take a picture of my two boys and just leave it. I don't know whether I'll leave it in the desert where he died on his grave, just to say that's your part of your legacy, what you left behind. He was the type of bloke I think I would like. He always used to stick up for the underdog. Maybe I wasn't as rough as tough as him, but if he had survived, I probably would have been proud of him, like to sit and talk to the man. He's the type of a man I can safely say I'd probably like to meet.